Hello Photo 130 students. As promised, this is going to be our recap of week 2, just to make sure we get everything covered, and then expectations rolling into week 3, and to cover anything that may have come up in the in-person sessions as well. So you guys know currently you are going into working on the shutter speed photo project. And this will be a compilation. You'll have one slow shutter image due as well as one fast shutter image due. The sheet on the project guide, I've actually updated that. The new updated version is out on D2L to include both the shutter speed project as well as the depth of field project, in case you get ahead and have some free time. The secondary sheet, and then I'm going to also run a description on that as well as to what we're looking for, and then show you some student examples. So I have the first one, the photo shutter speed project, pulled up right now. Just that document in blue is the assignment for the final project. So what we're looking for again is one slow shutter, one fast shutter, and I'm going to be going through some student examples on how to accomplish that, and then what some of the settings look like. What I have attached to the bottom along with this visual aid over here is an activity that I think is good to practice before you start on that project. This would be an activity where you try out, let's say if you have someone that's running in front of you or walking in front of you, or if you have something that's running on a constant loop. That could be a ceiling fan, a desk fan, could be running water in your kitchen as well. Trying out shooting something like that you have control over, and adjusting your shutter speeds at different variables. So if we're looking initially, you start off really slow. This adjustment starts off, let's say 1/8 of a second, and then move up as you're going through here. I think that'll be really, really important, and there's a number of reasons why. The first couple weeks tend to be really information heavy, and I do get that. We tend to pick up a lot of stuff if you are brand new to this photography world, which is the expectation walking into a 130 level class, is that you don't have any of this knowledge. So again, I understand it's information heavy when we're looking at this. Important within the first 3 weeks, month, is really getting a good grip on the capabilities of the equipment that you're working with, and that'll make your time in the field a lot quicker when you're setting up and shooting. So this first activity, again, I suggest you try doing. It's not something you hand in, but again, this will be motivation for learning how to adjust settings on your camera quicker. Is adjusting these shutter speeds, because of course we had that exposure triangle. Once you adjust one thing, and right now this is going to be a shutter priority, the first thing that we're adjusting, you also have to compensate with aperture as well as ISO afterwards. So you're never just going to be changing shutter speed. You'll end up having to figure out how to compensate with those other two settings. So practice, practice, practice. As you're going through, the guide does say, you should follow a quality decision tree. And that's achieving a really low ISO so you don't have a lot of digital noise, and having something that is properly exposed as well. I think the listing on here does have a pretty good description, talking about beyond mechanics. Try and follow the rule of thirds so it's visually appealing. I think that'll help out the overall project as well. And consider some of the information that was listed on the cheat sheet. When we're looking at principles of design, are we going to be able to identify a dominant principle? Because that's something that we'll want to end up talking about. What is going to be the dominant principle in your photo? So take a look at those and then say, be prepared. Be like, hey, like out of these 6, I think I could easily apply this one to my photograph. Additionally, I know the rule of thirds isn't absolute, but it is a very good guide to setting up a composition for your photographs. Looking down a little bit further, to talk about, there's going to be a couple options. So if you're working on a slow shutter speed image first, because again, you're going to have a slow shutter speed image and a fast shutter speed image. There's a couple ways of accomplishing a slow shutter speed image. That can be something where you have an object or thing in your foreground that is captured blurred, because it's obviously if someone's walking in front of you, you set up a slow shutter speed, they're going to appear blurred. The background is going to be crisp and in focus. Conversely, if you want to go ahead and track a subject, and I have some good examples on that, and you're following along, let's say with the person walking on the sidewalk with you with a slow shutter speed, and you capture that image, how that will visually relate in your photograph is that that person or object is going to appear in focus, and the background will appear blurred but and you'll see some horizontal lines moving along with it. It'll be represented, but it'll be soft and blurry in the background. The last one we have on here, the fast shutter speed, where you have an object that is more or less frozen or stopped in motion, is when you use a high shutter speed, and that'll be appropriate to the motion of the subject. Now that's kind of a diplomatic way of putting that, but think of it in the terms that, a person walking down the sidewalk is going to need a slower shutter speed to capture a fast or frozen image versus a car driving down the road, because they obviously move at different speeds. So fast shutter speed, that actual point that you're going to select, is going to be relevant to your actual subject that is moving. Because again, people usually go a lot slower than cars or moving vehicles. So keep that in mind. There's not going to be one exact setting. It'll take some practice with this. Okay, so this is the front of that sheet again. The area that's in blue, this is the project information, and the information that you'll have is, again, so you do last name, first name, and then the underscore, slow shutter or fast shutter, and you'll upload these images to Widen. You'll have for each of these the raw file, so that's a CR2 or NEF, or if you're another user other than Canon or Nikon, you'll have its own suffix, as well as the Photoshop file that's required for the project objectives. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to move this over so I still have it open. And I'm going to take a look. Right now, if you haven't seen this program before, this is what Adobe Bridge looks like when you open up files within it. There are a number of viewing options. You can actually up on top, you can see the path to how I got here. Now I'm within my computer and users, here's me. I'm up on my desktop and I have a folder on my desktop named Shutter Speed. So if you have the Adobe Suite, I think this is a really great organization tool. A lot of people even just use it for documents. I love to use this for photos because it does retain and show you some basic information that we have out here. Again, this is the program that I'll make if I go out on the weekend, if I shoot 300 photos on Saturday. It's going to be very, very easy to sort through them using this program and basically the very large preview format, which is all this is, on my computer screen. So what I have right here, you see I have this image open up. So the way this works is I can adjust any of these window panes to be the size or format that I'm looking for. So right now I'm actually in the essentials. You can also choose these other areas, and I can take these bars and I can adjust them at my wish. So if I want to see bigger thumbnails over on my left, I can adjust them like this. But I think so I can see just a little bit of each. And I can make this smaller and I can see more file information and metadata and so on and so forth down below. What I like to do as I'm sorting through these is I typically like to have my image as large as possible and then have my basic metadata information right here and have it be viewable. If you're brand new to Bridge and you're starting to get your feet wet on this, again, I'm going to show you a different area that I think will be helpful, and I want to make sure I touch on this so we don't miss it since it is just only the beginning of the semester. I'm going to go ahead and click on Film Strip. That's another viewing option. Again, you can see it's slightly changed how I'm looking at my stuff. Now I have this essential film strip that's down at the bottom. You'll see what now appears over my left that wasn't previously listed is this information along with the filter. Again, when we get into the larger projects, I love to use this area over here. I think it's extremely easy when it comes to sorting. You understand what I say when I'm looking at this. So as we go through here, we see there is information here, date created, date modified. It gives you this sort of basic information. Keywords, if you've already associated with them or attached them to your files, that would be relevant. What I think is most relevant for this class and for what we're doing for our projects, we have exposure time, aperture value. Like these two, at least for the first couple of projects. Obviously shutter speed, that equates into exposure time, how long your shutter is left open. So if I pop this open, essentially out of all the files that I have in this particular folder, it shows me how many of them, let's say I have 2 that are at half a second. I have 2 that are at 1/4 of a second. And it gives me this listing as I'm going through here. So essentially these would be, without doubt, say 1/400th and above, my fast shutter speeds. And then these these is to say 1/80th of a second down to, and see these are filtered down here, down to 5 seconds. These are my slow shutter speeds. I really, really like this sorting feature, and you may find that you like it as well, because again, you're going to need one of each for looking through these. So if I go out and I shoot on a Saturday and I shoot 300 images, and they're kind of scattered, it took, some slow shutter speeds at the beginning, and then switched out back and forth throughout the entire day of my shoot. This is a great sorting tool without individually going through all those files. Same thing when we go ahead and I'm going into depth of field, and we have one shallow and one deep depth of field. This will give you my same answers. Oh, actually, I clicked on focal length. Let's go back into aperture value. There we go. So looking at aperture value, if we're looking at things that are really shallow depth of field, we got these F numbers that are in the single digits. I think that's safe to say that those would be the shallow depth of field shots that you took. And we're looking at into the double digits and definitely a little higher into them. We're looking at the deep depth of field images. And second project coming up, really nice sorting tool to look through your stuff extremely quickly as compared to individually sorting through 300 images. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the essentials because I have these laid out. So we're going to be taking a quick look at both the raw file and then the Photoshop file when it comes to the fast shutter speed images. So the first one we see out here, water is a really popular theme. If you're doing water at this time of year, you might have to be indoors if you're in the Wisconsin area, I guess Midwest in general. Pretty much any running water outside is frozen really, really quickly. So if we're looking at this one, we can see that this is the original color format. This is not edited. Time of day that this was taken in was rather late, and I think the color quality is kind of interesting considering that we can see that his name is Ben. Ben shot this image at an f-stop number of 5.6. Extremely fast shutter speed of 1/4000th of a second. So if we were just taking a look at the cheat sheet that was selected before, and I pulled up, and you see that again, 5.6. Ben's image is located somewhere around here. His camera, I don't think, went any lower. He needs to be in this area of the exposure area for aperture, because his shutter speed is so fast. It's off the chart over here on the left. So that's a good reason as to why we need such a fast shutter speed to accomplish this, because if this again is his lowest aperture, so we got 1/4 of a second. He ends up having to manipulate those settings because he wants to capture this in the sense where it looks like it's kind of chaotic and busy. It's not necessarily serene or calm. So if we take a look at his next image, shot on the same day. I talked to him, and because he was one of my former students, and we take a look at that first image, it's actually taken right down here in this area. So this essentially, they house the same information, so the way that things are captured and the settings can make them look completely different. We get the original versus the Photoshop files. I think his are a little overdone when it comes to pumping in probably a little bit too much color. We had the discussion as well. If you think you've gone too far with any sort of editing, you probably already know the answer to that question. The same thing when it came to cropping. Up here we can see this is the original. Slightly weird when we go to the edited version. If you need to do some sort of cropping, because you have an element in there, make sure that the aspect ratio remains the same. We can view that these are the same width. It's just they've taken some off the top, so it ends up looking like a longer rectangle. Let's stay away from doing that if at all possible. So we get this difference. This is the original raw file, and we got an aperture of 5, and then a shutter speed of 5, and then an f-stop number 22. So again, this is rather calm when you look at this. This is a 5-second exposure with a really high f-stop number, which doesn't let in a lot of light. Again, f22, this is the amount of light that we're in. So again, he's gone off the chart when it comes to the supplemental over here, over on the far right with a 5-second exposure. f22, I know his camera that he was using, it's actually the highest possible one that he had available.